would love to be a good storyteller. I would love to make art that just connects with people and tells a story. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. I mean, really, we already tell stories in our art. I mean, you might not realise that you're doing this, but every piece that we make is a visual history of how and when we did it, how we felt whilst we're doing it, and what was going on around us as the piece came together. Often these pieces hold lots of memories for us, and in there are stories for us. But how do we connect and tell stories beyond how the piece came together, what the story was for us? How do we use a piece of art to tell stories to our viewers, to the people looking at our pieces? So of course there's lots of different ways you can do this, and some of them are really subtle and clever, and some of them are far more apparent, and I'm going to go down the apparent route today. I thought I would share one of the pieces I made recently that developed its own story and hopefully get you thinking about your own projects and how you can use them to tell stories too. So this one starts very ordinarily, and I'm in my junk journal working on a page that already had some paint on it. I just started by adding some more paint just randomly and a bit of mark making just to get it going. I'm going through a phase at the moment of adding strips of washi tape to my pieces. I go through these phases. I think it tends to be dependent on what's on my desk at the time that I'm working. And on my desk at the moment is a pile of washi tape, so they're getting used. I really wasn't sure where I wanted this piece to go, so it is really random at this stage. Adding layers to see what and how it develops, not trying to direct it, just letting it grow in its own way. There's always a risk involved in just layering up like this. You're never quite sure if you're just going to end up with a mess and that if you'll be able to save that mess in some way, but you do have to take these risks. And trust that in the process that something will come out of it and not worry too much about it. Don't see it as a risk, just see it as play. The joy of playing in your art journal, your junk journal like this, is that you'll make loads of different discoveries. But it might not always be easy to see them as you're working there. Sometimes you can be a bit too close to it. And for a long time with this piece, I could not see it developing into anything. Every time I add a layer, I was thinking, I'm getting further and further away from this resolving into anything. And that's part of the risk that I was talking about. But remember, we're not calling it risk, we're going to just talk about calling it play. But I was enjoying the mop making, and that's what's important. I was doing my usual thing of working on a few pages at a time, so I did sort of leave this piece to go and work on something else so I could let the paint dry, particularly when I'm sort of changing up from colour groups, say from hot to cold or cold to hot. It's just a really good way of keep your momentum going, keep working through, but also allowing the paint to dry on separate pieces. So you're seeing it all as one flow, but it was actually a little bit more disjointed than that. I've been using a lot of the downloads that I make for my DigiDelightful patrons and using them on all the different pages that I've been doing recently. I've got a big pile of all the art packs that I've designed so far for my lovely patrons, and it sits on my work desk. And I find that's a really good way of them sort of, they catch my eye and I beg to be used in pages. So it's a really good way of actually using them. So great tip there. If you have art downloads or collage pieces or ephemera, don't just let them languish on your computer kind of unseen. Make sure you print them off when you get them. Print them off, put them somewhere you're going to see them quite a lot. You can even put them in sort of clear plastic folders. And it is a sure way that you'll actually use them. I like those connections that you make when you're working on something and you've got things that you might want to include. It's kind of fun to have those kind of connections just happen. All part of that creative clutter or just creative connections that you can make if you allow yourself to have all these things to hand. So these did catch my eye, and I actually have a couple of the same page printed on different types of paper, as I did a video about, well, with different printing ideas recently for my patrons too. At this stage, I didn't know if this would work on the page, but I thought I would get it all cut out and just play with it and see where I went with it. Bird caught my eye too, so I cut that out as well, just really to see. It kind of looked like an abstract nest to me. I still wasn't 100% convinced that this was working, but I thought I would just go for it and see what developed. I'm already trying to find a visual story here, even if I don't realise it, that's kind of what's going on. It's still pretty abstract, you can have abstract stories, that's absolutely fine. But it did start developing into something a little less abstract for me. So even here, the story was more about what I could do to add harmony to this piece to bring it together, perhaps some more mark making or adding colour that would bring the foreground and the background together. These were sort of running through my brain at this time. But as I said, it was kind of coming together as maybe a more obvious story. So the idea of adding words to the piece started to sort of ping out at me. Perhaps something to do with robins and nests and home. So I pulled out some printed material for this, intending to go through them and pull out some very specific words: robin, nest, home. My mind was making a story around what I could see, like really obvious stuff. Nothing wrong with obvious, but as I was doing it, just watch what happens, because you are seeing this in real time, and it did surprise me. So my brain is consciously trying to develop a story around robin, nest, home, and, you know, with the nest being the circles there. But my eye catches the word poppy on the page, and it instantly is drawn to it, and I suddenly know that this is Poppy Robinbird. So say hi to Poppy Robinbird. I started to cut out part of the sentence that had the word poppy in it. It's just easier to cut out the sentence and then cut it into single words if I need to. I was going to do that, I was going to trim it down, and then I actually read the sentence that I had randomly cut out. Honestly, I had not read the bit that I'd cut out. I just was going for the poppy word. Once I'd read it, that sentence, my eye was drawn to another sentence on the page at the same time, and I cut that out. It's almost like I could see nothing else on the page, just these two sentences. The whole process took literally nanoseconds of random connections to resolve, and the story arrived without too much effort, as I allowed my subconscious to fill in the gaps once I'd realised who this character was. Having something like this as a lead focal image on your page is a great way of making a story. So going from a story I was actively trying to create to opening up for a new story to develop needs an action of kind of staying open to ideas and possibilities and allowing yourself to pick up on the clues that are trying to lead you in a different direction. Once this story had resolved, I actually had an emotional response to it. So I kind of knew that this was connecting to me. And I often find it hard to add words to my pieces because when my brain consciously searches for things to add to art, it just always finds the obvious. And it just becomes too glib for me. It's kind of meaningless. So I think what I'm trying to say is adding meaning or story to your art that connects deeply with you first, then find a way to tap into it and listen to what you're saying to yourself beyond the surface stuff. And this kind of unconscious random connection worked for me today. My conscious mind was busy trying to find ordinary, and whilst it was distracted doing that, I actually found a story that really connected. And hopefully when you connect with the story, on a more meaningful level for you, it will also connect and resonate with others too. I mean, if it doesn't, that's fine. The important thing is it connects with you, and that's what matters. So enjoy finding your stories for your projects today. It's a great creative exercise to try, so have fun with it. Keep on looking after yourself, and I will catch up with you again soon for some more art sharing. Bye!